3 points for our reflection today. The first is the disease of leprosy. The second is the first reading from the Old Testament about Naaman, the military officer. And the third, about the 10 lepers who were cleansed. 3 points, so we'll be here for another hour and a half. Did you bring your sandwich with you? Leprosy, my friends, I have experienced it and seen it, I should say. I haven't experienced it personally, I've experienced it by observation. Leprosy is a disease, and it's not good to hear, but unless we hear this properly, we will not appreciate our reflection and where we stand in all of this. It's a disease that eats into the human system. And when it eats into the inside, it begins to show itself on the outside. Any illness that we have begins inside, and sometimes it shows itself outside. The visible signs of leprosy is that a person who suffers this disease loses feeling in the extremities. Leprosy. Pretty soon lepers cannot walk. The illness eats into the system so much that they do not even look good. And when they don't look good, people keep them far, very far. This is not an exaggeration. Tropical countries face the disease more. And people will not even want to go close to a leper. If they're on one side of the road, you go to the other side. And lepers are not productive for society because they have lost the feeling of the extremities. And so they beg for a living, and they rely on what people give them so that they could eat. It's a very sad disease. Not the only one, but one that is obvious if you happen to confront a leper. I mentioned this very quickly. Mother Teresa and her sisters for years have been working in leprosariums, hospitals only for lepers. And precautions have to be taken for those who care for them. In the Old Testament, Naaman was like a general, you know. It was in a pagan kingdom and a pagan army. And the Jewish people were working as domestic help in many of these places. So the handmaid, the one who was working in Naaman's house for his family, knew that something was wrong. So she went to the wife and told the wife, "I know where he can be healed." Naaman had leprosy. Naaman was a powerful man. General, powerful. Naaman was the one who was giving orders and people were following. So Naaman went to the king and he said to the king, very privately, obvious, that this illness of mine, I am told by the maidservant, can be cured. She mentions the name of a prophet, Elisha, a prophet of the Jews. And the king said to Naaman, "Go." And the general is going, so they made a big deal of it. The reading tells us his retinue. That means the whole group that went along. And Naaman went to see Elisha. Now that part of it is not in the reading. Now it follows. When he got to Elisha, the prophet, Elisha had heard about it, and he knew that this man needs to be healed. Listen to the language that's in the sacred scriptures. It has meaning. What do you wish? I wish to be healed. And Elisha the prophet prays over him, and Naaman is healed. The power of God working through people. That's what a prophet is. One who was working for God. He was healed. And when he was healed, as the reading continued to tell us, Naaman was so grateful, and he had plenty of this world's goods, and he brought along, in case I'm going to be healed, I want to give a gift. So he brought a gift to give to the prophet. And the prophet said, "No, I didn't heal you. My God healed you. I don't accept any gifts for doing the work that God asked me to do." Listen to what Naaman said. Now his language changed, and he began to address Elisha the prophet. "I know that your God is a powerful God." Your God. Naaman was already recognizing that Elisha's God is a personal, living God. So he said, "If you don't accept the gift from me, would you be so kind to allow me to take 2 mule loads," I'm using the word as was, 2 mule loads of earth from this place? Why? Because when I pray now, I want to stand on this ground. This is God's holy ground. I want to stand on this and pray to the Almighty. And so he took 2 carts of dirt back to his residence, so that when he prayed, he had to pray to Elisha's God. Naaman was not a believer. In every good sense of description, he was a pagan, accustomed to worshiping idols. Look at the change. Now when he prays, he's standing on the earth of Elisha's God. A conversion, a change of heart. Put it aside. Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. On his way, he had to pass through Samaria and Galilee. History tells us that the Samaritans were not looked on very kindly by the Jews. And we've said this before. It's because when they went into exile and they came back to their motherland after scores of years, they had intermarried with pagans, and therefore Jews did not regard them as pure Jews. It's a very simple explanation, but it carries over in the veins, just like blood runs in the veins. 10 lepers approached Jesus. You know leprosy? You know Naaman in the Old Testament, hundreds of years before? 10 lepers. Why were they all together? Because nobody wanted to be close to a leper. In fact, you know, it is eradicated. I can speak for India. It's eradicated in India. There is no more leprosy in India. In fact, if anyone had any residual leprosy, there are leprosy colonies that the government takes care of them, even now as I speak. They are kept separate. 10 lepers, the only company they had was their own company. They didn't need to explain their disease to anyone. The 10 of them understood what leprosy is all about. They suffered the very social ills that any leper felt, being cut off from society and from family too. 10 of them come. Obviously, when they heard that Jesus was a great healer, they wanted to be healed. And Jesus, go show yourselves to the priest now. That was an indication that they have been healed. One of the things about leprosy is that the extremities don't grow again, but the disease doesn't make progress. So a leper is always recognized that way by fingers that have turned into stumps and toes that have turned into stumps and ears that are eaten away and noses that are almost just a hollow. They understand one another. 10 of them come to Jesus and they want to be cured. Jesus cures them. They're all happy about the new way they are feeling. One of them comes back to say, thank you. Only one. And then the gospel tells us that the one who came back was a Samaritan. The one who returned was a Samaritan, not looked upon kindly by the Jews. Jesus was a Jew. He expected that kind of treatment from Jesus, but it didn't work that way. Jesus cured him. Leprosy, Naaman, 10 lepers healed. What about you and I? So our leprosy is not physical. Our leprosy, my friends, these days is more spiritual and moral. There is in society today, and you and I cannot just look at others and say, society. No, we are society. There is in society today an illness of the spirit, an illness that is moral. People have lost the sense of right and wrong and truth and justice. And we need to go for healing to Jesus. Isn't that so true? Eating away at our society, our moral attitudes and sinfulness that is not making of us a better nation or people, but we are wallowing in our sinfulness. None of us are exempt. The devil is very active and will do everything to keep us away from Jesus. No one is an exception. The devil tries very hard so that our inner selves get so full of the leprosy of sin that all we can do is to ask for forgiveness. And who does it? Jesus. Look at the crucifix on the wall at the back. That's a sign of a second chance. When you see that crucifix, and when I see that crucifix, he died to save you and to save me. That is a sign of a second chance and the forgiveness of the Father through Jesus, his Son.